Hello, Zalto Live listeners. Before we get started, we wanted to let you know that more teachings from Zen monk Claude AnShin Thomas are available in his 2 books, At Hell's Gate, A Soldier's Journey from War to Peace, and Bringing Meditation to Life, 108 Teachings on the Path of Zen Practice. Both are available wherever books are sold, and all proceeds go to the Zalto Foundation, dedicated to promoting nonviolence, awareness, and positive change.
Hello and welcome to Zalto Live, the podcast featuring Zen Buddhist monk Claude AnShin Thomas, who will share with you his life experiences that includes not only military combat, personal violence, and addiction, but also healing, transformation, and the ongoing joy of everyday life. Please enjoy listening.
As there haven't been any formal questions sent in, I will take questions from the group. But first, I have been, someone wrote to me and they explained a bit about their life. They are committed to sitting. And they asked me, would it be okay if they sat for 20 minutes on one period and on another period sat for 5 minutes? In the end, it's not important how long we sit. It's that we sit. And the attention we bring to the cushion or whatever we're sitting on. So I wouldn't have objections to something like this. Still, it's about the attention, to have the commitment to bring our full attention to that in-breath and then to that out-breath. And with the intention to bring our attention to this reality, to see how quickly our mind distracts us. And then again and again, bring our attention back to our breath. Breathing in, knowing that we're breathing in. Breathing out, knowing that we're breathing out. Question from the group. Yes, Yuta.
You've talked about the visit with your son, and you were
Moment. Oh, would you, when you finish in English, would you also translate in German? Okay, perfect. Sorry.
I'll do that. You were referring of your son, but as that grandchild. Why?
Figure of speech. Just popped out like that. No intention. But I also notice, I'm very cautious about using these kind of possessive pronouns. My grandson, my granddaughter. I'm not the only grandparent. So that child has a lot of connections. That may have been at the root of why, the reason that I stated it like that, but in truth, I don't even remember. But thank you for asking. Question from the group. Oh, Robert.
When I achieve a lot of goals, my ego has a habit of taking over. How do I work with that?
So take the word ego, write it on a piece of paper. Go out and find a nice, safe place. Bring some matches with you or a lighter. Light that piece of paper on fire. And watch it burn to ash and never use that word again. Yes, it's just it's too much of an overused word. And I don't think people really actually have an understanding of what that means. Yes, if things are going my way, I have to see how my conditioning seduces me into taking too much can't think of the word.
Ownership?
What?
Ownership?
Yeah, ownership, or taking too much credit for what I've accomplished. And at the same time, I need to be able to take responsibility for to take credit for what I've accomplished. It's all about balance, and balance is not in a fixed place. The reality of balance transcends our ideas of it. Too often we get wrapped up in the ideas of things, and then we're attempting to get the world to conform to those ideas, or we're using all of our ideas wrapped as an identity. Suddenly we're establishing an external identity, and we're not owning our life. We're not taking responsibility for it. We're blinding ourselves to the truth of it. So how to take credit and yet keep that credit in a sort of a right place. That's what's revealed to us through practice. And if I think I'm in the right place, I can be sure that I'm not. Question from the group. Myo Zen.
Does impermanence sometimes frighten you?
No. I mean, it the reality of impermanence, aware of that. It's sometimes really painful for me how unaware people are of that, and how much suffering is created under the guise of fabricating permanence. Yeah. Now, that being said, I'm having more conversations about impermanence, the impermanence of my existence. And there sometimes as I settle into if I sort of contemplate that reality, it kind of takes my breath away sometimes. But no, it doesn't scare me. That'd be a waste of time, because there's nothing I can do to prevent it. And that's what creates so much suffering, the denial of it instead of the acceptance of it. Would I like this existence to continue? Sure. I find it quite interesting to observe how life continues to unfold, because I'm willing to be present for it, regardless of how it's unfolding. I'd like to see how it continues. Question from the group. Oh, Getz again. Go ahead, Getz again.
Hi, Anshin. Hi, Kenshin.
Hi.
Anshin, would you be willing to share some of your experience about the sentence, "As I am, the world becomes"?
Well, there's really not so much. I've been talking about that already. So the more I'm willing to just become still, to see how my conditioning, all that I've inherited from past generations, from the collective consciences I have been a part of, the more I'm willing to be present to that, and the more I'm willing to be present to the information that the world is giving me, the more I'm willing to see the ideologies I've wrapped myself up in, to give myself an identity rather than just being, the more I begin to experience the world without the filters of conditioning. I find my interactions quite interesting, because I'm able to interact with so many different people across broad spectrums of ideology, because I'm always looking, where do I connect, not where am I different? And I'm not approaching the world from an ideological perspective. For me, that's the amazing gift of Zen practice. I'm constantly looking at how I'm connected to the space that I'm moving through. Yes. So if I'm experiencing a lot of challenges and difficulties in my life, what is my role in that? If I'm all of a sudden focused externally on all the bad things that are being done to me, or how people or circumstances they're not doing it right, the more suffering I'm creating. I need to really bring the attention back to self. Know that there is no formula for waking up. There is no concrete definition of what that means in an ideological sense. So therefore, as I am, the world becomes. Because self and world aren't two things. I get an opportunity to experience the world as it is. So it can be equally said, as the world is, I become. Because self and world are not two things. Not one, but not two. Question from the group. Yes, Peter. And then Len.
You often say, greetings. You often say that if you think something is this way, it's not this way. Is there anything that we can possibly think that is the way we think it?
So I start from that premise. So if I think I'm in balance, I'm probably not in balance, because I'm attempting to get my electric informed in my ideas of balance, which may have nothing to do with balance. I mean, there may be some aspects of it. So as I become more conscious of how I'm conditioned to attempt to get the world to conform to all of my ideas, when I begin to see how I'm conditioned to do that, so that I can feel whatever it is that I feel through that process, and I become more willing to just let those, to not abandon those ideas, but let them sort of drop away. Then I begin to see if there's any aspect of those ideas that do sort of fit with the reality of balance or not. Yes. Len.
Thank you for taking my question.
You're welcome.
Would you be willing to speak on the process that you use for choosing a dharma name?
So, if a person wants to take precepts with me, they don't get bestowed a dharma name until they take commitments as a novice. So the first process, let's say 5 precepts. So if you wanted to take 5 precepts, then you're sort of joining the family. And so you would get a family name, which is Angyo. So you can see a number of people have that. If you wanted to continue the process and you wanted to take a novice ordination, then you would ask And then I would decide. Or in truth, I might ask. But then you have to sew one of these. Not first a black one, though. And there's a process you go through to get the cloth, and then there's a very specific way to sew it. The rakusu that you're sewing it for me. So you would give it to me. And then I make the decision whether to give it to you or not. So through that process, I also have a variety of names. I don't know, like 700. And then also in texts, study text. And then through my relationship with you, I'll come across some names, resonate with you regarding as it pertains to our relationship. And then I might put those, let's say there's 3. So I write them down on a piece of paper. And as we continue to go through a process, one name will go, this is the one. And so I choose that one. So it's intuitive. And it's interesting. It's also interesting to see how those names relate. Question from the group. Miyo Zen.
Is there something that scares you?
Different things frighten me. I would say they don't frighten me. My relationship to certain things give me access to my fear. And it can be different things at different times. So the last really long motorcycle ride I took, I was driving through West Texas, and the wind was really strong. It was coming from the side. And I was driving on the motorway. The lane I was driving on was up here. The line on the other side was way down here. So it was a big, long hill down there. And when sometimes that wind would gust on me, and it would move that motorcycle. And there are big trucks passing me. Yeah, that gave me some access to my fear. I was deeply relieved when the wind stopped. But in the middle of that, I just said, the circumstances told me how to work with that, because I was willing to be present. So I didn't force myself to conform to some ideas of what I had to do. I just needed to slow down a little bit and just be ready for this. Yeah, and if a truck was getting ready to pass me, just move more to the right, so that there was plenty of room in the event that I get hit with a gust. So there are fear. Now, I recently did a presentation in front of a very different group of people. It was a real first for me. I wouldn't say that I was afraid, but more anxious. And I can watch that all of the thoughts and ideas that anxiety produces. And I know they're just thoughts and ideas. And so how do I go forward with them? Then not reject them or allow them to make my decisions for me. That awareness is so valuable to me. It's really valuable. I'm also in a process. I'm considering to move the center. I've been in this location 25 years. That's longer than I've lived ever anywhere. So I have long established connections here. I know where everything is at. And so to sort of pick up states and move to a place where I don't know anything really, there's some anxiety around that. However, I cannot let that anxiety decide for me. I need to allow it to be present, because it also becomes part of the decision-making process. But it's true, this area is getting quite congested. It's getting increasingly more expensive. And if you believe in the reality of global warming, somewhere between 10 and 20 years, a lot of Florida is going to be underwater. So these are all part of the decision-making process. And so, yes, I have anxiety. Not a great amount, but it's present. I wouldn't actually call it fear, but it's a cousin. We could say it's a close cousin. However, practice helps me establish a position where I can be present. I'm willing to be present to the full range of feelings, and to not wrap myself up in one identity or another. To sort of keep these, to sort of create a false sense of security, and to just be present. To not focus like this, but to be willing to experience, to look in a larger sense. It's like when I'm driving down the road. Here's an example. Kenshin and I wanted to go to the vacuum center yesterday. And we started, it's in a community about 12 miles from here. We got out onto the only road that gets you there. And after about 20 minutes in traffic and having only moved about 300 yards, and we decided to go someplace else. Yes, this is all part of the decision-making process. So yes, I have it, and I'm glad, and it doesn't run my life. Question from the group. Yes, Peter.
How would you work with somebody who wants to go to the next level with you, but his arms are disabled. He can't.
His what?
His arms are disabled. He can't physically sew. Mm-hmm. He can't sew the rakusus. What would you do instead? What is a equivalent gesture or equivalent activity in your?
I don't really know, because I don't have a connection with such a person that I know of. But if I did, and their commitment was really, I trusted in their commitment. Now we'd figure something out. I'm confident about it. Yes, we'd figure something. If they can navigate a keyboard, or they could use a computer through voice recognition, you can always buy one. You can even buy T-shirts that have a rakusu stenciled on it. Yeah, I met a guy. This was some years ago. I think this person came to a public talk that I did, and he was wearing a rakusu. So I approached him and said, "Oh, I see you're wearing a rakusu. What Zen center are you sitting in? Who do you study with?" He said, "Oh, no one. I saw it on the internet. I just thought it was cool, so I bought one." There's always a way to work stuff out. Question from the group. I'm not encouraging you, by the way, to go on the internet and buy rocks. Don't do that. Not a good idea. Just saying. Yes. Question from the group. Yes, Daishin.
I was just going to say I could throw in my precise sewing skills, and I would volunteer to help.
How would you frame that?
How would you feel about that?
As I responded to Peter Muse Shen, it would depend on my interactions with the individual, and then we have to see how we could go forward, or how we could make this circumstance work. Do you have a question, Kenshin?
I do.
The translator has a question. I mean, the translator interacts with me every day and waits till this moment to ask questions.
My question is, what role does friendliness play in Zen practice?
Well, this comes back to my relationship with the realm of ideas. If we have an idea about what friendliness is, that's not it. I mean, how many of us know someone who go, "Hi, it's wonderful to see you," and we know that that's not really friendly. It's like so empty. Yeah. But that's their idea of friendliness. It is really, it's through a disciplined practice, rooted in self-reflection, sitting just to sit, walking just to walk, eating just to eat, really discovering the practice of listening, deep listening with our whole being, being really conscious of how we speak, that the truth of friendliness can show itself to us, and it's never the same. It's different from moment to moment. I mean, I had the opportunity just the other day. I visited a cafe with a very personal acquaintance of mine, and they tapped me on the shoulder. They said, "Now, when you take your dishes back, not too obvious, but look at the woman in the corner. Look at her earring." And so, as I took the dishes back, I very discreetly took a look at the woman in the corner's earrings. But then as we were exiting the building, that particular woman was coming out the door right behind us. So I simply stopped and I commented. I just said, "Wow, really interesting earrings." Yeah. And that began an interaction, very friendly. So it's the willingness to engage from a non-dogmatic place. Last question. Yoko and then Robert again, last two questions.
Anshin, what is your take on the idea, I don't know if it's an idea, but the false pride, what that means?
So I was raised to always diminish my talents and abilities under the notion of not being prideful. But I was also not owning the truth of myself. If today somebody says, "Oh, you're really good at that," I simply say thank you, because it's true. There's certain things I am quite good at. However, I know that those things can always be improved. So I don't identify myself by the things that I do. So I don't wrap myself up in an identity through a certain way of talking, a certain way of presenting myself. I see that in Zen circle. And a Japanese Zen teacher from before times used to describe that as the stink of Zen, talking the talk. So how to just be present. I'm not as good as just how to keep in balance. People are telling me how wonderful I am, and I thank them. People are telling me how horrible I am. I thank them, because I'm usually not as good as they want me to be, nor as terrible as they think I am. It's really just to be present. Yeah, some things I do really well, and some things not so well. And that I do well, it's how to own that. Robert.
Do you find you can learn more about people in silent retreat than you can by having a conversation with them?
Well, that depends. In the retreats and there's a great deal to be known in silence. And I do know that people hide behind conversation. So but what becomes known in the silence, not so much the other, but self. And the more I become aware of self, the more I'm able to see where I connect and where I don't. So I can pay attention to the places where I do connect. They're there. But in retreats with me, while I encourage silence, I also have a practice of deep listening and mindful speaking, where we work on the discipline of listening and speaking. Also, people meet with me once a day, and we have an exchange. So while there is silence, even in my training, I would do these 3-month training periods. We would sit from 4 in the morning till 9:30 at night. These were interspersed with periods of eating, working, and studying. The silence that we practiced was strict. Not only not speaking, but not looking. And we didn't begin to meet with a guiding teacher until we maybe 3 weeks to a month into this process. It's really about what's being revealed.
Thank you for listening to this episode on Zalto Live. If you would like additional information, please look at the show notes or visit zalto.org. That's ZALTHO.org. Our work is made possible solely through donations, so please consider making a tax-deductible gift on our website. We wish you well and thank you.